Excellent. Well, hello and welcome to the good, the bad, and the ugly of all things real estate. Today we are talking about wholesaling. And that is something, if you're a real estate investor, you are going to come across it either as the person getting the deal or as the person offering the deal. And today we're dissecting a deal, or the opportunity of a lifetime, as I like to call it. And we're also going to go into what a good deal looks like and what red flags to avoid and all of that. And joining me today is Barry McGuire, who is one of the best creative real estate lawyers. Well, I mean, you're a great regular real estate lawyer too, but one of the most well-known and best creative real estate strategy lawyers in Alberta. And he has been teaching real estate, creative real estate like wholesaling since about 2009. So about 14 years. So if there's a legal question around creative real estate, he's going to know it. So what we're going to talk about today is, again, we're going to dissect that opportunity of a lifetime. And so that came across my desk and it looked all great, but the details were a bit confusing and the contracts were even more confusing. So we'll go in detail on that. And then Barry's going to tell us all about what good, bad, and really bad wholesaling is. So Barry, why don't you tell us a bit more about your experience with wholesaling?
All right, thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on. It's nothing I like doing better than talking about real estate, just like you. And so it's always it's fun to have an opportunity to come on your show and talk to the folks. Yeah, I've been on the creative side for about 14 years, and wholesaling shows up for a lot of people in a lot of places. So your audience probably knows, or maybe I should ask, should I just give a little tiny bit of background on what wholesaling is to lead into?
Yes, yeah? I would love it if you would tell us what a proper wholesale deal should look like.
Sure. Okay. A wholesaling deal, sometimes people call them assignments or call the strategy assignments. Wholesaling is a strategy where you find an under market property. Somebody's looking to sell their property for less than market value. You would like it to be as far under market value as it can possibly be. If you identify that as a property that's quite a bit undervalued, then you would talk to the seller and do your very best to write up a purchase contract and have you and the seller sign it, where you agree to purchase that property for that undervalued price. Once you have it under contract, if you are a true wholesaler, what you are looking to do is find a third-party buyer who will purchase your contract from you, and you are looking for that third-party buyer to pay you what's called an assignment fee. So if you find a property that's $50,000 under value and you find an ultimate buyer who loves the property, like to buy it, you might ask them to pay you a $10,000 assignment fee. These are negotiated numbers, folks. There's no right number or wrong number or too high or too low. It's a negotiated number, but on a property that's undervalued by $50,000 and is attractive to an ultimate buyer, they might very happily pay you a $10,000 assignment fee. Then they purchase the property and they've got an instant $40,000 worth of equity. So that is kind of that's the theory about how it goes. Along with the purchase contract, once you talk to that ultimate buyer and agree on some numbers, you generally write up a pretty simple contract, 1 page, maybe 2 pages. And that contract says that the ultimate buyer is taking over your position in the contract you have already signed. You're not selling them the property. You are selling them your interest in the purchase contract.
Yes.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I was just going to point out that I've come across assignments and wholesaling in 2 different ways. One is with a traditional conventional purchase and sale contract where it's going to be purchased with bank financing and title is going to transfer. But I've also seen it, and this is going to be the case in my example, where it's actually a creative purchase with seller financing and title is not transferring, and then it's the agreement for sale or seller financing contract that's getting assigned. So that really complicates it potentially, don't you think?
I do think so. The traditional way of doing it, it's quite simple to describe. Find an undervalued property, get it under contract, find a buyer, sign that assignment, clip the assignment to the purchase contract, collect your assignment fee, and off you go. That is straightforward. It's simple. Those kinds of deals are done all the time. It's a little, well, actually little, it's a lot more rare to find one where the purchase is using a creative strategy like agreements for sale, and then that agreement for sale deal is being assigned. Those are tougher for sure.
Yeah, well, and I know because I've done them. Is every once in a while I'll come across a deal because people will, sellers will come to me through my website or whatever marketing. They'll come to me, they'll really want to unload their property. They're open to seller financing, but it's not the type of property that I normally buy, especially, for example, if it requires a full renovation, not really my thing. So those are the types that I would then assign. And a lot of times that end buyer is still going to want to make use of the seller financing. So yeah, I've seen it
Yes.
more often than most people would.
Yeah, no, I think you have, with the number of deals you've seen over your career. You would have seen that a lot, and there's certainly advantages to doing that. The ultimate buyer then does not have to. I mean, if it's a fix and flip opportunity for that ultimate buyer, and they can do that full renovation, then they've cut out that, a big problem of going to the bank or going somewhere, and often it's private money at more expense. So it can be a good deal, certainly, for the ultimate buyer.
Yeah, so it can go either way, but as Barry was saying, it's more common and way simpler if it's a conventional purchase with bank financing. So just so you know, there are both ways, and you don't have to do it complicated. You can stick with simple. Okay, but the opportunity that came my way was a more complicated one, which it was, the whole thing was a little confusing and a little unclear. And that was one of the first red flags for me. So I'm just going to go over some details, and then I'm going to get Barry to weigh in on that. So just don't want to miss anything. So I've got some notes. So the opportunity was for us to fund the purchase deposits on properties that the wholesaler was purchasing with creative means. So he was buying with seller financing, not mortgage. And then he would turn around and sell or assign those properties to a third party. Now, maybe they would end up getting bank financing. Maybe they would just take over the creative. We don't know that. That would depend on them. And so then once it was passed on, sold, assigned to a third party, then we would split the profits. Now, he claimed he had a large number of foreclosures and pre-foreclosures coming his way. And now this is a quote, so I'm going to read it directly. Our initial offer will be secured with an average of $5,000 initial deposit that will secure the property and be paid out a 2 times profit at the point of sale. So he's saying that we would be putting in $5,000 or $10,000, and then he would find the end buyer, and then we would double that amount of money. We would get double back in a few months when he assigned it to somebody else. And so what he would do then is give back all of our initial money, the 5,000 or 10,000. And he's saying, initial deposit would be returned to you after the first deal. That makes all future deals 100% funded by your profits. So we'd get our original 5,000 back. The profit that we made, the double our money, would stay in the deal and keep that engine turning to churn over more deals. So I have a few questions with this. Now, first of all, I want to hear Barry's thoughts on the whole idea of the deal.
Okay. So Sherilyn, I did take a look at the proposed contract. And so one thing we said early on is that the notion of wholesaling and assignments is simple, and as you can describe it in 25 words about how it works. In looking at the proposed contract, it was a terribly confusing, complicated, certainly not put together by a lawyer, or if it was a lawyer, he knows nothing about real estate and especially nothing about wholesaling. So it was complicated and it was confusing. And that was the first big red flag for me. If you can't understand even a little bit, I was having trouble going, where is this thing going? Trying to make
Well,
sense of it. And I'm implying, so number one, it was really complicated.
well, I
It was,
know I've worked with, we've worked together on a few new terms for various contracts where you're putting in all the required terms, and I'm looking at it, and can we take a little bit of legalese out of this and still have it
yes.
have the meaning? So I mean, you and I are, obviously you are, but you and I are both pretty well versed in not only contracts but also in making them understandable, and this kind of wasn't. But of course, nobody would realize, because I forgot to mention, the contract that we're talking about wasn't the assignment contract. It was a partnership for us to work together with the wholesaler. So it's kind of wholesaling adjacent. So this was a partnership for us to work together, but it still has to be a solid contract that makes sense. And, but I did have a couple other questions with this, because I was wondering, why would he give away all of the future profits when we're getting back the $5,000 within a few months, and the profits are going to keep the wheels turning? So if it was me, I'd be doing anything I could to get that first $5,000 so I could start doing this all by myself without giving away half my future profits.
Exactly. I mean, if all it's going to take in his estimation is $5,000 to tie up properties, if I was in his shoes, I would do anything I could to get the $5,000. I would work really hard on my first deal. I would get my 5 back, and maybe if you're going to get 5, he's getting 5. So now he's assigned for 10,000. So he gets his 5 back. He's got 10 on the assignment fee. Now, after doing one deal, he can do 3 deals
Well, exactly,
because he
because like
has 3 5,000. So that didn't make it. That was a red flag for me,
yeah,
that
yeah.
someone can't put together $5,000. Now, $5,000 that's not chicken feed. It's a good chunk of change, but for a good idea, if you're in the real estate business, if this is a deal that made sense and you knew this person and they came along to me and said, Sherilyn, I've got this great idea. I don't really want any partners. I'm hoping that you, Sherilyn, as a true friend, would just lend me $5,000 so I can do it. And then I will pay you back from. I mean, you might have said, hey, great. You know, you are a good friend. Here's your 5. Somebody should be able to raise $5,000 if this is such a good deal. So that I didn't like that part of it.
I didn't either. And I was thinking, if it really was this fantastic and this guaranteed, then I'd go and pull it off my credit card if I'm going to get it back. And I mean, and to me too, if you're a successful real estate investor who is at the point where you want to bring in partners and start this big investment system, we'll call it, then yeah, it does strike me a bit funny that the 5,000 was not attainable. Back to that contract, it was also, so again, this is the partnership between the wholesaler and myself to work together to get these deals and fund them and then turn them around. That partnership agreement was performance based, but the only measure of performance was whether or not he got a property. So the fee, the deposit was refundable within 6 months if he didn't get a property, and if he did get a property, then it was non-refundable, and then the investment continued. But without any kind of measure, then really he could have bought a dump condo in the hood and paid too much for it, and he's still met his minimum requirements of performance.
So that was also bad. Now, he also referred to it as a partnership agreement. And you and I both know that there is something in Alberta called the Partnership Act. And if what's been set up is a partnership under the Partnership Act, which it could be, says it's a partnership. One of the terrible things about a partnership, especially in this circumstance, is your partner can commit you to contracts. I mean, he could, once you're partners, he could go out and be signing on your behalf and you would be responsible. So you would definitely not want to be in a partnership, even if this was, a better, more understandable, likable deal than it was, you probably still don't want to be partners. And that was yet another red flag.
Yeah, so oh,
What
sorry, go
what
ahead.
about the another thing, Cheryl, and sorry to interrupt, is that he thought his market was going to be the foreclosure and pre-foreclosure market. That market, in my experience, is fraught with issues and difficulties and stress and angst and inability to get information in any kind of way, let alone a timely way. So if that's where he's going to find his deals, those always have so much hair on them,
That
I think.
is such a good point. Personally, I stay away from foreclosures completely. I, even when people come to me as distressed sellers wanting to sell their properties and make a deal, if they're already in the foreclosure process, it gets so complicated. If they're in arrears and they're just facing that possibility, now you've come to me at the right time. Now we can figure something out.
It's
Yeah,
pre-foreclosure, you still have a chance, I think.
that's right. Okay. And oh, another question that came to me. So let's most people are not going to have this partnership agreement. But what my first thought was when I saw this was, if this is how this contract is, what are his other contracts going to be like? And this is especially important, not only for the wholesaling, for the assignment, but also if he is buying with creative financing. Those are very specific contracts that have to have very specific terms to make them successful and make them a win-win. So I had a huge question about how his other contracts would look.
Well, you're right. And you would certainly want to look at every other piece of paper that he thought he might be using along the line, whatever part of the deal it was. You definitely want to have a look at those, read them yourself carefully, because I know you could do that. But for folks who don't have your experience, they probably should get some legal advice on all of the contractual material that they're being asked to participate in. And then probably from a lawyer who understands the creative side of things. Although really any lawyer could probably look and point out efficiencies.
Oh, for sure. And I always recommend that to people, regardless of what capacity I'm dealing with people. You should always get your own independent legal counsel to review the contracts, because that your lawyer might interpret something differently than you thought it might be, or might see something that you didn't see. And their job, your lawyer's job when they're reviewing contracts, is to make sure that you understand what you're getting into and what you're signing.
And it's so important when people are starting out. It's really important when you're doing your first deal or two or three, probably, till you understand the process and the documentation. I have many clients who are wholesalers, and now that they've done two or three deals, they don't need me all the time. They've got paper that they like, and they can carry on and do things. And I often say to my wholesalers, if you can do it like this, you don't have to get me involved. Why pay me money to do what you can do yourself? But at the beginning,
Yeah.
very important.
Yes, for sure. Now, back to wholesalers in general. So my worry about dealing with wholesalers from the standpoint of getting a deal from them is that a lot of people get into wholesaling as a quick buck, because when you think about it, wholesaling is kind of the quickest buck in real estate, because you're not putting any money up front quite often. You're getting the property under contract, then in a few days or weeks you're turning around and assigning it or selling the deal to somebody else. And then you've basically washed your hands of it. You have no skin in the game. You really have no vested interest in whether the property and the deal succeeds or not. So I know there are a lot of good wholesalers out there, but my worry is, how do I know which one I'm dealing with?
Well, that is a question, and even more concerning, just like on the contractual side, when you're just starting out, you would be much better able to talk to a new wholesaler and figure out what's going on with them. But for a new person, kind of how do you do that? And what do you know? So, I mean, so if you're talking to a wholesaler, if you're the ultimate buyer looking to purchase a wholesale deal, I mean, you have to, as the ultimate buyer, decide what kind of diligence you're going to do or what you need. You are buying a property. The wholesaler isn't buying it. He's got it under contract. You're the one who's buying it. So all of the rules around buying a property generally apply to the ultimate buyer purchasing a wholesale. So, I mean, what kind of diligence do you have to do? I mean, for most people, getting a home inspection would be ultra important. Unless they can write a big HELOC check and pay cash, essentially, they'd have to have it subject to financing. Those would be the two kind of minimum things I would like to
sorry,
see. That
just to interrupt there. Now, is it standard? Because I've never been on this side of the wholesaling. I've never bought one from somebody, so I do have questions. Is it standard in a conventional type of purchase that's being assigned for me as the assignee to say, hey, I would like to see the contracts before I sign anything for the assignment? I'd like my lawyer to review the purchase agreement before it's assigned to me. Is that normal?
yes, it is normal. I mean, you are essentially buying that contract, so it's absolutely normal for you to get the contract. And so with your wholesaler, you'd say, listen, I'm not doing anything until I get that contract, plus your proposed assignment contract, and I want to run both of those by my lawyer.
Excellent. Yeah, that was a big question for me. Because like I say, I've never been on that end of the deal. I've only been the supplier. What else do I have? So are there any red flags for me to watch out for when I am looking to get a wholesale deal?
I think speed is one thing. Sometimes wholesalers will say, you've got like 4 hours to think whether or not you want this deal. So when people are forcing you to make decisions quickly, you could say perhaps in 4 hours, yes, I'm interested. I'd like to carry on the conversation, but you're not going to be ready to
Write a check.
You're not going to be ready to sign. Now, wholesaling can be difficult because once a wholesaler gets going in their business, they have a buyer's list. They have a list of people who they've dealt with, who trust the wholesaler. And when they get a new deal, they put the deal out to their buyer's list, say, all right, basically, who wants this deal? And if they are a good wholesaler, if they've come up with good deals, people that have dealt with them before know that. There's nothing like doing one successful deal with someone before when you get the next call from them, you're much more willing to say, yeah, I'll take that. So there can be a lot of competition for a good wholesale deal. So you have to balance am I being forced to move too quickly with, am I going to lose the deal if I don't do something? So you got to watch that.
So here's a question. Would it be acceptable, you think, if I've never worked with you and you're a wholesaler and you offer me a deal and I say, well, because I've never worked with you, I probably can't work fast enough for this, but can I review the details or at least draft contracts that you use and we can, so that you can kind of do some background homework before you're put in that pressure situation?
Well, I mean, I think as a new wholesaler, a person who's new to the wholesaling strategy, I think that's perfectly reasonable to say that is that's being cautious. And if you get nothing but aggravation from your wholesaler, if you get no cooperation, then speed kills. So don't be forced into moving before you're ready. So yes, it's fine to ask. And if you don't, they won't give you some time to just calmly do something, then lots of deals out there. I'm away.
Well, yeah, and I would think that if they were genuinely a good wholesaler, that they would be accommodating. And if they weren't willing to at least show you draft versions of their contracts and their assignment contract, then maybe that's not the kind of person you want to work with anyway.
Right, I agree.
Okay, and are there any questions that we should be asking wholesalers to make sure that we're getting the information we need? Is there a list?
I don't really have a list because it's really property dependent. It's property dependent. And if you're offered a deal and you get to look at the contract, then you're really more interested, I think, in the diligence side of what you need. On the contractual review side, I would certainly, I would want to see that the wholesaler has the ability to amend the name of the buyer. If I was the wholesaler, I would want to be able to amend the name of the buyer in order to remove my own liability as I pass that deal on to the ultimate buyer. And I realize we're skipping from the interests of the ultimate buyer to the interests of the wholesaler. But if you're wholesaling, you certainly want to, when you wholesale, know that you are out of the deal.
I'm
So
sure, oh, sorry.
I think really you can trust people to some extent, but you have to verify for what you need to be verified.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are people on watching here who are hoping to become wholesalers as well. So we do want both perspectives. And what about other kinds of due diligence, like getting references from other people that they've done deals with, or from their lawyer or somebody like that?
I haven't run into that in my practice. I mean, I think it's possible that people might be doing that the ultimate buyer might say, you know what, I need to know how many deals you've done and that you've done them successfully because this is my first one. I'm a little edgy, so I want to know who you are. But I just personally have not run into that. But that's, again, there's nothing wrong with asking the question. What's the worst they can say is, no, sorry, you're too slow. I'm moving on to the next person. Fine.
Now, if let's say I've bought a wholesale deal and I sign it off, and then I discover it's not what I thought I was getting into, it's a bad deal, the property is somehow I feel like I was misled or something like that. Is there any recourse?
Well, I think the recourse would be found if you're upset with the wholesaler. Your recourse would be found in the assignment contract, and
Okay.
those are pretty bare bones. Pretty bare bones. Lots of those say that it's up to the ultimate buyer to do the appropriate diligence they think they need to do, and to satisfy themselves that they want to make the buy. So that throws, for that kind of a contract, it throws the investigation and the diligence back on the ultimate buyer, which is why you need to be careful and take some time and really look at the things that are important for you. Now, I have clients who have done so many of these deals, they don't worry about home inspections. They've done so many, either wholesaling the deal themselves or doing fix and flips because it fits for their project. They don't even bother. I go, well, what about the cracked foundation? They go, you know what? They show up about 1 out of 20 deals. But in our business, we found we have to move quick because we're competing against other people. So we've gotten good enough at this that we don't worry about it. So there's a big difference between starting out and doing your first, 1, 2, 3 deals and having it be your full-time business.
Well, and speaking of that, we might be talking about the same people here, but I do have some colleagues who've done so many wholesale deals. They buy, they don't worry about these problems, but then if they're assigning them, they make sure that the end buyer knows before they even consider the deal. They make sure that the end buyer knows that here's the issue. It has foundation issues. It's going to be between $50,000 to $75,000 to fix. And so now they go into considering this assignment, this wholesale deal, knowing that. And I think that's a real key to a good wholesaler.
It is. I mean, a good wholesaler will do that. They treat themselves as if they are the owner of the property right now, where that owner has the obligation to tell the buyer about latent difficulties or latent issues, the things you can't see by even doing a proper home inspection. They might be hidden away, but if the seller knows, they have to say. And so I applaud wholesalers who take that point of view, because it's karma, isn't it? If you treat people decently and always play for win-win, it comes around to support you. If you don't, you get sued.
Oh, for sure. And just continuing that thought, that would be one good question to ask your wholesaler when they come to you with a deal is, do you know of any latent defects or any defects at all with the property? Do you know of any major renovations or repairs that must be done? And get that in writing and at least an email. I think that would be a
Yes,
really good question.
that would be a good one. And if you could ask that question and get an answer, it would be protective for the ultimate buyer.
Perfect. All right, now back to working with the creative financing, because I do assign those deals to other people sometimes. One worry that I always have is because it's not a conventional deal where you get a mortgage and you get title, and the seller is instead staying on for a while. So the seller, the original seller, is still involved in the property. I've always kind of worried about the end buyer's ability to successfully complete that creative side. So, and I really don't have an answer for how can I ensure that that person is going to be able to complete. Yeah, any thoughts?
Yes, and I have the same concerns. I mean, when you've talked to the seller and explained and set up an AFS deal, the seller is on a, what should we say here? On a fairness and a relationship basis, relying on you to kind of guide them along, because that seller knows nothing about an agreement for sale. They likely don't have any idea that you could assign it. Although if you're properly disclosing, you might say to them that you have these options for exiting the AFS deal that you've set up. So yes, I agree with you that I think you have to, as the wholesaler, try and do a little bit more to understand that the ultimate buyer will do what they are supposed to do. So what could you do about that? I think this is one where you can dig deep, as deep as you can, in your questioning of the ultimate buyer. What kind of experience do they have in real estate? Do they understand what an agreement for sale is and how it can be, you know, more administratively burdensome than other transactions, as you and I both know? Do they, are they prepared to really put effort into making this thing go? And everybody maybe says they will, but you should also explore that with them. And then I think it would be important that the deal that you are assigning, an AFS deal that you're assigning, is a decent deal.
Yeah.
Does this deal have a chance? Does it have a decent chance of being a good deal for the ultimate buyer? Because if it's like that, the ultimate buyer is way more likely to do what they have to do to keep that good deal moving in the right direction and to get the benefit. So a skinny AFS deal to a relatively inexperienced ultimate buyer, I wouldn't do that one.
Well, and just to continue with what you were saying, I think if you know the person's track record and you think you can count on them to complete, then by all means, and it's a good deal, then by all means go forward. But if you don't, if you're not reasonably sure they can complete it, if they don't have that track record that you know of, then maybe find somebody else or do it yourself. And
yeah, sure.
Well, just we've been chatting forever here, Barry.
We have. Oh my goodness, it's 6 o'clock
I
already.
know,
But we started late.
So we got to wrap it up. But just to summarize, there are some really good wholesalers out there, and there are some really good opportunities for you to make a quick buck in real estate with wholesaling if you do it right. And along those lines, I know that Mr. Barry McGuire has a course coming up this Saturday, and that is the place to learn to do it right. Barry, can you tell us about your course?
Sure can, Sherilyn. So yes, we are doing a full day wholesaling course. Saturday, March 18th, we are in Calgary at the Clique Hotel by the airport, and treat us very well. We've been there before. This is a full day, Sherilyn, and it's an expansion of the 2 or so hours that we do at the Rapid Cash program, expanded to a full day. We've got a whack more examples and exercises and role playing and all of the things that we like to do at those focus workshops. So to get more detail or register, you can go to barrymcguire.ca.
I'll be posting, actually, we're going to post that link right now, aren't we, Isabel?
Okay, super.
I have to wake her up. So we'll post that link in the comments, and
Okay.
anyone who's watching from Zoom through my email list will email the link to you, so you'll have that. And speaking of comments, if anyone has any questions, feel free to either email me or post them as comments under the video, and we'll make sure that they get answered.
Yeah.
Even if it's, you know, a couple days later, we'll make sure that they get answered. And also, if you're on Facebook, make sure you like and follow the page and click the sign up button in the banner if you want to get added to the mailing list, so you can be the first to know about these fantastic sessions with people like the amazing Barry McGuire. But yeah, if you have ever thought of wholesaling as a little bit of extra side income in your investing career, definitely check out Barry's course, because I've worked with Barry many times before, and I know that his courses are very good. And I don't know enough about wholesaling to teach you, so you're going to have to go to Barry. All right.
Thanks, Sherilyn. I am everyone's welcome. Glad to see you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Barry. It was incredibly informative, and I hope that we have helped some people to navigate the wonderful world of wholesaling.
Thanks, Sherilyn. Happy to do it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.